3. So this is author James Rosone talking with author Nathan Van Coops. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, James. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, and it's great to be able to connect with you again. I must say I've really enjoyed meeting up with you at NINC last year when we went on the author's plane ride. You took us up for a little scoot around the area and showed us an aerial view of your hometown of St. Pete and in the area. I thought that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's always cool, and I always like having other local Tampa Bay authors to hang out with, and of course we've been able to get lunch a couple times, things like that. So
I know it's
we're
crazy.
fortunate.
You have no idea how many local authors are in the area until you started this group, and next thing you know, we've got half a dozen of us meeting up every month. It's been really awesome to see.
Yeah, and a lot of knowledge there too. Just a lot of really talented people.
Yep. I love the exchange of ideas and just being able to say, well, what worked and what didn't work, and how can we make it better?
Yeah.
That to me is just invaluable to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I had for you, because normally you're the one doing the interviews, you're the one asking the authors all the questions. This time we have it in the reverse. We have an author asking you the questions. So we're going to dive in and ask you some questions about getting to know you as a person and learning about your backstory before you became an author. So one of the first questions I have is, where specifically did you grow up and what was your first job you did?
Interesting. Yeah, so I bounced around a little bit as a kid. I think we moved 8 times in the first 12 years of my life, something like that. We lived in California, Northern California and Central California, bounced around, and then ended up in Pennsylvania for high school.
Okay.
So my very first ever job was working at a tool shop. I was 15 years old, and I had to go and clean tool making machines, dust all the metal shavings off of them. And I would come home with my boots full of metal shavings, and it was an awful job, and it was absolutely terrible. And my biggest memory from that, my worst memory of that job was everyone there had spit chewing tobacco, and they would have a little can of spit next to their machines. And one day I was cleaning one of the machines and accidentally knocked a whole can of someone's tobacco spit onto my leg. And that was the end. I said, you know what, I'm done. This is not the job for me. I'm out of here. And then I've worked, a bazillion jobs growing up. I think I had, when I first started dating my wife, we had a list, and I think I had 22 or 23 jobs at the time that I had done. So been all kinds of things. Apple picker. I was a chimney sweep. I've done a lot of hardwood flooring installs, all kinds of things. So it's been an interesting road.
So have you found, having worked so many different jobs and careers, that it's giving you a lot of really good writing material when it comes to creating characters and plots and people, because you've done so many different jobs?
I think part of, moving around a lot helped too. That was the other thing that helped relate to people. And of course, I remember I had some jobs waiting tables, because, that's a good one to always, try out. And I was able to relate to people partly because of the many jobs I'd had, and also a lot of places I had lived. I was living in New England, but we had moved around a lot. I had done a couple of road trips around the country, so I'd gotten to see a lot of major cities and even a lot of rural areas.
Yeah.
And so just having ways to relate to people is a great way to start conversations and connect. There's always something you can connect with someone on. We have so many points in common with, and obviously the more well-traveled you are, the more jobs you have, the more you can find something interesting to talk about. So it was very useful. And then, of course, just those interactions sometimes lead to ideas, and which can lead to storytelling ideas, things like that. So.
That's awesome. Now, you and your wife, how long have you guys been married now?
We're coming up on 5 years, and but we've known each other since 2008. Okay, so we've been friends for a long time. So yeah, it's been a long friendship.
Now, where did you guys first meet?
At the airport, actually. I work at Albert Whitted Airport, downtown St. Pete, and at the time I was running the maintenance shop for this flight school. I've been involved in aviation for a lot of years. I started flying when I was a teenager. I think I was 15 or so when I started flying, and I've always loved aviation. It's one of my big loves. So I became a flight instructor, and then I got into maintenance because I wanted to get into bush flying potentially.
Okay.
And all those jobs you have to be a mechanic for. But then
Yeah.
I realized after like working as a mechanic for a while, I really enjoyed the lifestyle of that better than I liked the lifestyle of being a pilot. So I sort of settled in and love Florida. I love St. Pete where I live. I had done a lot of traveling before that, but once I settled here, I just really liked this city and the lifestyle. And I had, just decided, I had deliberately decided I'm going to set some roots down somewhere, and I'm going to get to know a lot of people, because the one downside to moving all the time is you're constantly uprooting your friendships. And
Yeah.
I knew a lot of people all over the place, but I didn't have any one place where I had a lot of friendships.
Yeah.
And that was my big goal when I moved to St. Pete, was I'm going to establish a network of friends. And so I've just continued to do that. And then now they overlap. And unfortunately, we've met friends who have been going on to get married, or, it's been fun.
Yeah.
And my wife and I met and dated, and then went our separate ways and got back together. But and because of us getting married, like one of my good friends married one of her good friends, a couple of
Nice.
one of her bridesmaids, one of my groomsmen got together, and things
Oh,
like
that's
that.
great.
Like, yeah, it's a lot of fun. Like when you stay, there is an advantage of staying in one place for a while
Yeah,
and
there
just sort
is.
of building community. And that's something I love about St. Pete.
Yeah, when we first moved to Tampa, well, I got stationed here in 2004, and my wife and I were dating in well, she was at the time, I was living in Wisconsin. She was her last year at ORU in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we started dating. We actually met through eHarmony, believe it or not. And so we were dating, and then I finally got my orders with the Air Force, and I went out to California for 6 months of training, and then she got a job in Lake Wales, and I got orders to MacDill Air Force Base. And I was like, where the hell is MacDill Air Force Base? And then they said,
Yeah.
oh, it's in Tampa. I was like, Tampa? They have an Air Force Base in Tampa? And so I was like, wow, this is perfect. My girlfriend's working in Lake Wales. I got
Yeah.
orders to Tampa. How much better could
Yeah.
this be? So we moved here in '04 and got a house. We stayed here until 2010. And then we moved over to Germany for 3.5 years. But we hung on to our house and we kept it rented for 7 years. And then when we moved back, and what was really cool, like you're saying, when you're here for a while, you get those friends. So we were here for 6 years before we moved away for 7. But when we came back, we probably had about 10 couples that we had been friends with and stayed friends with while we were
Yeah.
gone, and came back, and
Yeah.
we were able to pick those relationships right back up.
That's
And
fantastic.
it's been great because we've had the same church, the same group of friends, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just been neat. But all their kids, when they were little, when we left, are all
Yeah.
teenagers now. And now their kids are babysitting our kids because our kids are all little.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of fun to see the full circle like
That's
that.
fun. Yeah. That is the cool thing. All of our friends, we have a lot of couple friends as well that we've kind of come up together with. And now all of our kids are getting to grow up and get to know each other, which is great. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I kind of like that. So you have been working in aviation for a while now. Now, what drew you into aviation? Like you first got your pilot's license when you were 15, then you said you wanted to be a bush pilot. So what drew you to being a bush pilot, which obviously led to you being a mechanic? And then you just said, hey, I like this better.
It's interesting because a lot of people get into aviation for different reasons. Like, for example, when I was in mechanic school, there were people who could sit there and tell you the name of every military fighter jet in the world
Sure.
because they loved airplanes.
Yeah.
And they loved, or some people loved aviation history, or some people just love maintenance. Like they really liked how things work and engines and that sort of thing. Like I was very different in that I couldn't tell you the name of a plane other than the ones I had personally flown. I didn't go to sleep at night daydreaming about carburetors or anything. Like I wasn't especially very mechanical as a kid. I was always up trees reading books. I was running around the woods, and the blackberry bushes and
Sure.
California. So I wasn't especially, when I decided to go to mechanic school, my parents were like, "Are you sure? Because you're not very mechanical." But my grandfather, who actually was a pilot, one of the things every time he would talk to me on the phone, he would say, "You can do anything you set your mind to."
That's right.
And I really believed that. I mean, he grounded into my head where it was just, if you, and I really do believe that if you take time and effort you can learn anything, and you can learn to be good. I mean, you're not going to necessarily be a natural at everything, and you have certain raw talents, but you can learn just about anything if you really set your mind to it. So I did, and it turns out I really enjoyed it, and it was one of those things that I love. I got into flying because I love the sensation of flying. I used to, like I said, I spent a lot of time as a kid up trees because I loved being up high. I loved the idea of being way up at the top of a tree and people walking down below me and they didn't know I was up there. Yeah. And I could, watch them go by. I could watch the world be real small. And in a little airplane, it's just like that. I mean, there's been nights where I've been the only person in the sky above St. Pete, just sort of cruising around. I love flying at night because the stars are out above you and all the lights of the city light up below you. And I'm just this little speck blipping around over town, and I've got the whole city to myself. I've got the whole sky. It's just mine. There's not very much traffic except over maybe in Tampa or Clearwater. And it's peaceful, it's relaxing, and you're flying. I mean, there's not much cooler of a sensation than
there isn't.
Flying. And so that's, like I said, I eventually learned a bunch of airplane names because I worked on them, and once I learned how to take care of planes. Like I said, I put an engine on a plane today. That was what I did all day today. Was I put an engine on a plane, and I came to love it over time because you get good at something, you enjoy doing it. But the reason I got into it was just because I love. When I was 12 years old, I wanted to be Peter Pan. I mean, that was like that was the goal. I wanted to fly. And if you had asked me what superpower I wanted at any given point up till then, it was going to be, I want to fly. Although now I think I would pick time travel.
Yeah, me too. That would be more fun. Well, the ability to
also get out of our current circumstances too. The current 2020 so far has been rough. So
rough year. Yeah,
there's got to be some other timelines we could visit.
So when you got into doing that, and clearly you love doing that job, that's a passion of yours. How did you end up falling into writing?
It's interesting because I didn't get into it till probably my late 20s. I would guess I was probably 28 or so. Right around the time I met my wife, and I had all these friends, and I moved to St. Pete. I remember being out at the beach one day. We were all splashing around out in the water, and me just kind of spitballing this idea I had to my friends. I ended up writing a story based on friends I knew at the time. A lot of the characters were all people I knew in real life. And it was just sort of this alternate reality that I had in my head. Oh, what if this was possible? What if time travel were possible? And I had been a big fan of Back to the Future growing up. And that was kind of this idea that just sort of stuck in my head. Although the very first idea I ever had for a story was while I was flying a traffic patrol plane up in Baltimore. I used to have a job flying this guy named Detour Dave, and we'd fly around, do morning and afternoon rush hour traffic. And I would just be blipping along up there for like 5 hours a day. And one day this balloon flew by, and a lot of people think that when you let go of a balloon, it just keeps going up, but it doesn't. It eventually stops somewhere. Yeah. And usually it was around my height. I was around 1,400 feet, and this balloon cruised by, and I thought, oh, that's kind of fun. What if there was more stuff up here? And I had this whole idea for, what if the sky was more like the ocean? What if there was stuff that lived up here, plants and stuff like that? And that's how I ended up being my one of my other series, my second series, the Skylighter Adventures, which I eventually wrote. But that was kind of like just things that pop up in your head. It's, people always ask writers, where do you get your ideas? But the ideas are easy. Yeah. It's just the idea of, it's how to develop them and turn them into a cohesive story. That part is challenging, which of course I learned much later.
Yeah. So what's your long-term plans? Do you want to continue working in aviation and doing writing on the side, or do you want to at some point leave aviation and do the writing full time, or you just kind of waiting to see how things shake out over the next couple of years and kind of play it by ear?
I've settled into a really wonderful situation now where I'm self-employed on multiple fronts. I've been working for myself since 2012. And so I have an aviation business that I do where I proctor exams for people who want to become aircraft mechanics. Yeah. So because I've been a mechanic for a while, I now do this for the FAA, where if someone wants to become one, they have to come and take a test, and I basically administer those tests. Okay. And I still take care of some planes as well. and flight instruct here or there. But it's all like little things that I can piece because I'm my own boss. I can kind of make the time. So right now I'm doing 3 days a week at the airport and 2 days riding.
That's awesome.
But then I also do like during the day, like I'll schedule myself an appointment in the morning, and I'll go till lunchtime. But I'll book myself like a 3-hour lunch break so that I can go somewhere and write.
Hmm.
So I kind of work that into my day,
Nice.
because my day at the airport can be a little bit routine, can be a lot of the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So I have this wonderful creative outlet at lunch where it's, hey, okay, I can go and write and like do some escapist stuff and then go back to work and do some other things. And like I said, and if I need to do it 2 days, like I have complete flexibility, which is
Yeah.
nice. In situations like we're in now, I'm not doing the airport stuff. I'm just, at home or working from home. So being your own boss is a wonderful thing if you can get to that point, obviously. And so I have all the perks of being a full-time author in terms of I have my own schedule. I don't, the money I make goes to my family.
Mhm.
Other than, Uncle Sam takes his cut,
Okay.
obviously. But so I don't have any intention of really ever giving up aviation, but just
Yeah.
because I love it.
Yeah.
And I don't have any intention of giving up writing because I also love that. So I just have, the balance may tip more one direction or the other. I may do 3 days writing and 2 days at the airport, or something like that. But I always see both loves existing in my life.
That's really cool because you've been able
Yeah.
to find a passion that, two passions essentially that you're able to make work. You're not having to
Hmm.
sacrifice one for the other,
Right.
which a lot of authors unfortunately get stuck having to do is sacrificing one
Yeah.
for the other because one either pays the bills and they have to do it, or one is their passion and it starts to, not pay the bills and they have to kill it. It kind of stinks. So
Yeah.
you're really lucky that you've got that.
Yeah, it is nice. And it's also nice to have just a balance of creative outlets versus, hands-on type things,
Mhm.
where obviously aviation maintenance and flying is a very tactile, sensory type thing, but
Yeah.
it's not super creative
Yeah.
necessarily. So having that creative outlet, it's a great balance of lifestyle, because just doing one, I think, by itself would maybe I would get bored.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily want the pressure of just having to write all the time,
Yeah.
because I get tired of being in my house writing, that's why I write out at taco shops and stuff. I write
Yeah.
out and about.
I feel
Um,
you, man. I'm in that situation right now where it's like
yeah,
writing, I got to write all the time, whether it's 2, 3 hours a day or it's, 7 or 8 hours or 10 hours a day, but it's a 7-day
yeah,
operation and it does get
yeah,
tedious sometimes.
yeah. Because like you're only in that one mode. I mean, and
Yeah.
maybe I mean, granted, the nice thing about the writing job is that there are so many hats that you wear. One day you're the publisher, one day you're the writer, one day you're the editor. Like so you're doing a lot of things um, in the indie space that, and marketing, advertising, things like that. There's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of things to keep yourself busy.
So if you could own a plane, if you could own your
Mhm.
own plane, what kind of plane would you like to own? I mean, assume your writing is so wildly successful, you can kind of pick whatever you want. But what kind of plane would you like to own?
That's a good question. And I think I would probably pick a seaplane, something that was
Okay.
maybe a Grumman Goose, or albatross like Jimmy Buffett has, something like that, where it's big enough to put a lot of people in and fly around and land on lakes. Alternatively, I don't know if you ever saw the movie 6 Days, 7 Nights with Harrison Ford.
Yep.
Back in the day, he has a de Havilland Beaver on floats, which is also a really cool seaplane. I
Yeah.
when I was 20 years old, the first time I ever came to Florida. I went to the Jack Brown Seaplane Base over in Winter Haven and learned how to fly seaplanes, and it was the
Oh, wow.
most fun I've ever had flying.
Is it
And I
that much
haven't
different?
really done it.
Is
Yeah,
it a lot different
it's
than an aeroplane?
well, it's like being a boat, basically. So imagine you're a boat and you're having to get up on plane, and then all of a sudden, once you're up on plane, you just take off, and then you're flying, and then you come back down and land, and then you're back to being a boat again. So if you like boating and you like flying, it's the perfect blend of two. And you can also have amphibious planes, so you can just put the wheels down and land on runway too. So you get land, sea, and air all in one vehicle, which is basically the perfect vehicle in my mind. There's nowhere you
Absolutely.
can't go. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, because what if you want to fly down to the Keys, you know, and you're on a
Yeah.
float plane? Can you land on a
Yeah.
regular
You
plane?
can. Yeah. Yeah, you can.
No, that's
But
pretty
you know,
sick.
one day I have never been to Alaska, so I'd love to take a trip to Alaska and go buzz around out in the wilderness out there
I
sometime.
always thought it'd be kind of cool to get one of those old like World War II fighter planes, you know, like
Yeah.
a P-51 Mustang or one of those
Yeah.
P-38 Lightnings, the two.
My grandfather flew those. He was what inspired me into aviation. He flew the
Uh,
Lightning, and he loved that plane. He raved and raved about the plane.
I've heard that plane is amazing because it's got those
Yeah.
two really powerful engines on either side,
Hmm.
and it can just do some really awesome acrobats and just
Yeah.
phenomenal maneuvers.
Fast.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was the
really fast.
fastest piston plane in the war, I think.
Yeah, I wonder if I don't know if you can still buy those or a knockoff version of it or what.
There's
But
not,
man, that'd be
sadly, there's
sick.
not a lot still flying from that era, but I think there's a few around.
Yeah, that'd be pretty
Yeah.
neat. I got to go when I was living in Chicago. My grandparents were there, and they had an old B-17 bomber land for a demonstration that they had at an air show, and we got to go in the B-17, and that was really neat to be able to walk inside there and go to the tail gunner position and see the side gunner
Hmm.
positions and the ball turret and just be
Yeah.
able to see all of those positions and think to yourself, man, people flew in this thing 20,000 feet in the sky, clad
Yeah.
in winter clothes, fighting off,
Yeah.
Messerschmitts and
Yeah.
everything else. I mean, that must have been incredible.
Wild. Yeah. Terrible.
I know.
And
Yeah, Apple's got
yeah,
a new
amazing.
show coming out that's actually showcasing the Army Air Corps. You know, they made like Band of Brothers in
Yeah.
the Pacific. They're
Yeah.
making the same one with Tom Hanks and a couple other directors to showcase the Army Air Corps. And so they're going to
Wow.
be. I don't know if it's over I think it's over I think it's over Europe. They're going to do it, and they're going to be showing them flying the missions and whatnot. And I don't
Hmm.
know if a lot of people realize it, but like that actor Jimmy Stewart, he was
Yeah.
actually a bomber pilot during World War
Yeah.
II. You know, he
Yeah.
quit his Hollywood career and he flew heavy bombers over Nazi Germany and did
Yeah.
that, you know, for the war, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah. And he shot a film right here in St. Pete.
He did.
He was
He did.
yeah, he was out in Al Lang baseball field.
You know what's interesting? If you ever watch It's a Wonderful Life, there's that scene where he kind of loses it with his
Hmm.
kids in that scene right
Yeah.
there. That was actually Jimmy Stewart actually having a PTSD flashback and him just losing control right there. And it's really interesting because a lot of people
Yeah.
didn't catch that or realize that. He really struggled with that. And they think that that was actually like the first time they ever caught something like that on camera before because it was totally
Oh wow.
unscripted. But
Yeah.
they kept it because it was so perfect and real. But it
Yeah.
was completely unscripted.
Wow.
You
That's
know?
fascinating. Yeah, he was such a great actor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's neat. So I like the idea of a space of a seaplane. I've never flown one before. So next time you get access to a seaplane, you have to let me know. I'll
Yeah.
chip in some money for gas, and
There you go.
maybe we can go zip down to
Go splash
how long
around
would
in
it
some
take?
lakes.
Hey, if we wanted to take a day, how long would it take us to fly from St. Pete down to um, uh, Key West and then back?
Couple hours to get down, a couple hours back probably.
Okay, so it take us like
Yeah.
2 hours to go down there. So we could go down there, have lunch, tour around a little bit, and then fly back and be home for dinner.
Yeah. Definitely possible.
That is
Yeah.
awesome. That reminds me,
Yeah.
when we lived
Beats that 8-hour drive out the A1A.
heck
Yeah.
yeah. When
Yeah.
we lived in Germany, we were in Stuttgart, and so, excuse me, on a Saturday, we could drive over to Lucerne, which is about a 2.5, 3 hour drive from our house. And we could drive over there in the morning, have lunch, walk around, see Lake Lucerne, and then drive home for dinner. And then the next day, we could leave in the morning, and we could go to Strasbourg, France, which is about 2.5, 3 hours away as well, and have lunch, get a couple bottles of French wine, tour around, and then drive home for dinner, and then go to work on Monday. And that was literally your weekend, every weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, they call it the $100 hamburger is the idea of just getting in your plane, fly somewhere for lunch, turn around and fly back. You know, it's pretty common practice for people that own planes. There's a lot of
Well,
guys that hang around the airport downtown, and that's what they do.
That'd be fun. You know, I don't know when we could
Yeah.
do this, if that'd be possible, but I'll bet you could get 3 authors to chip in some money, and we
Yeah.
could all go zip down there and zip back, and that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Could be. Another Future Authors and Airplanes event
I
for
like
the
it.
podcast. So, yeah. So, yeah,
Yeah,
could
it'd
be
be a lot
fun.
of fun. So, what's your next project? What are you working on next?
Got a couple things going right now. I'm actually working on a fun side story for my In Times Like These series, where I've got a parallel story told from a different point of view, coming in from an FBI agent's perspective, who's got an outside view of these time travelers and trying to figure out what they're doing, what they're up to. So that's been kind of fun. Learning a little bit more about law enforcement, a little bit more about the FBI and the history of the FBI, because most of it occurs during the 80s.
Yeah.
And when they were first, and I have a female agent, and so it's
Oh, wow.
their very beginnings of trying to integrate the
Yeah.
FBI, because it was such a boys club
Male-centric
back
thing.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was super, white and male back then,
Yep.
and they were just starting to integrate, more diversity. And so it was an interesting time to be an agent, especially to be a woman agent at the time. And then I'm also working on the sequel to my third series is called The Kingdom of Engines, which is a fun alternate history, um, modern medieval adventure story.
Okay.
So the first book of the series is called Sword Fight, and it's a kind of swashbuckling revenge narrative set in a world where knights drive cars. So you've got a medieval culture with kings and queens and knights, but your knights are road warriors and drive muscle
Mad
cars.
Max in it.
Yeah, so it's a fun you kind of imagine a medieval world blended with like a Mad Max type world, and that's a lot of fun. So the first book is out already, but I'm working on the second book, which is called War Car, and it's been a lot of fun. It's almost like a medieval western
Now, who do
with
you
cars.
view as your audience? Like, who do you define, or have you discovered as your type of reader, your audience?
Interestingly, it's not who I initially set out to write for. I kind of just set out to write books that I would want to read.
Yep, that's what I do.
But I've found that the majority of my readers, at least for my time travel series, are people who are over 50, and 50 to 80. That range is actually probably my biggest demographic. I get a lot of people that are retired. I write long books, so I get a lot of people who drive trucks and listen to my audio. I've got quite a few people who are either disabled or underemployed, that sort of thing, who just have a lot of time to read. And like I said, because my books are in Kindle Unlimited, for
Yep.
example, you can just download all of them for free with a Kindle Unlimited subscription.
Yep.
And like I said, they're meaty books. They're long. The Chronothon, the second book of my series, is 200,000 words. So it's a long, fun adventures. But each book is self-contained. Like you don't have to read the next one to enjoy the story. You can just stop at any given point and know that you've finished an adventure, and you can go on if you want. And a lot of time when I first started writing, when I was putting out the Chronothon, because it was such a long book, it was right around the time people were serializing everything. Like, oh yeah, break that up into 4 different books. And it's just not how I write. Like it's a big story, but I like a story that has a beginning, middle, and an end.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in cliffhanger endings for books. I definitely have stepped up my game and have a lot of cliffhanger endings for chapters. Because I like getting emails from readers that say, you kept me up till 3 a.m. because I couldn't put this thing down. That's the best possible compliment you can give to an author. Where I've had it where people are like, I was listening to this audiobook in the car and I didn't want to get out. I never got out of my driveway because they got home and they didn't want to go in the house because they were still listening to the book. And so I definitely, try to keep the tension up now and work on the pacing and make sure people are, turning pages. So.
Yeah, it's fun. I've been thinking about doing some standalone books myself because I tend to write in series where it's usually I've got a 4-book, a 5-book, and a 6-book series. And it's largely because I write big scope stories, plot driven.
Yeah.
Some authors write very character driven stories. I tend to write more plot driven or stories. And my plot is supported with a host of characters. And so when I have all these different points of view and perspectives playing in, and different scenarios and scenes, it really expands the book quite large.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then it
You got
gets
to
to a
give all
point
those
where,
people arcs.
yeah, you got to give it the different arcs. And so most of mine are usually between the 110 and 120,000 word count books. So they're pretty meaty, but I've had to, chop them up to spread it out because
Mm,
otherwise a book could end up being like 700,000 words. And,
right. Yeah.
the problem is with Amazon, if you make them too big, you can't actually have a print version. You got to do it in
Mm,
volumes. And then the volumes end up costing $60 for like book one. And I don't want to do that to someone. So
right.
I
Yeah.
kind of chop them down. But you're right. Put them all in KU, and they get to read it for $10 a month. They get to read them all, so
Hmm.
it works out for everyone. Um,
Yeah.
but I've thought about doing the standalones where the book is, 180, 200,000 word count like that, and it's just I
Mm,
just cut down the number of characters, and we make it a little more narrow, a little more focused on
hmm.
the story. I think so. I don't know. I think I may end up trying some of that, next couple books to get it after this series.
Yeah. My problem is I'm always, 2/3 of the way through a book and then I get the idea for another book that I want to
I
write.
know.
It's in a completely different series.
I've got three
And
different
so,
series already picked out and lined up.
yeah, I have 3 series I'm currently working on, but I also have another several series in my brain that I want to write.
I know.
And so now I really think that maybe just writing more standalones might be good for me for a while, even though it's not the best marketing decision. Definitely
I
make more
know.
money off of a series. But just in terms of creatively, in order to be able to explore these ideas and have fun with them, um, I think I might just, have some more fun standalone adventures just because I'm in this for the long game. I'm
Yeah.
not going anywhere. Like I am fortunate that I have, um, multiple streams of income. So I'm not banking on every single book I put out being a hit.
Yep.
And, I have the flexibility to write what I love.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't I? I
Exactly.
plan to still be writing books 10, 15 years from now. At this, maybe I'll be right faster, maybe not, but I'm not in any hurry to go anywhere. So I'm gonna keep doing what works and what my readers like, and um, I'm also gonna do the thing that makes me happy as a writer, and that like I keep writing the books that I want to read because I think once you try to just do what the market wants, or um, I think there's it's a path towards burnout, and it's
Yep.
something that I don't want to. It's a path I don't really want to go down.
Yeah.
So,
That's what I always tell authors is don't worry so much about how many books you're pushing out every year. Focus on the quality and enjoying what you're writing, because
mm,
otherwise you're going to burn out and you're not going to enjoy writing. And when you stop enjoying it, it stops being fun. The
mm,
quality and the entertainment value of the book goes down, and then you
yeah,
start losing readers. And
yeah,
so if you just focus in on the quality and just enjoying and having fun, because God, man, who wants to be stressed out where you got to have a book out every 6 weeks or something like that? It's stressful.
yeah, yeah.
Just have fun.
I, I don't want to be on a hamster wheel. That's my, it's not a goal for me. So,
No, me neither. I'll wait and see where things shake out. I mean, like I think I'll probably be writing for a long time. How many
mhm,
books I'll be putting out every year, though, I don't know. I think ultimately I want to get to a point where I'm down to maybe like 2 a year instead of 4 a year. Um, just so I can
mhm.
slow down the pace and I can have a little more time developing some of the plots and the stories and the characters perhaps a little better,
Yeah,
where you really spend more time on an individual paragraph and
yeah.
chapter and making sure it's really good the way you want
I,
it.
I think one of the keys to writing is that, you know, in terms of long-term goals, for each year maybe, or each quarter, or whatever, you want to set some particular goals, but or maybe with each book you focus on a different element of the craft, whether it's okay, I'm going to work on character development, this is going to be my focus right now, or I know I've worked on pacing in the past, it's been a big thing for me, like, I'm going to definitely develop my pacing. But once you've mastered that, or at least improve that substantially, now you can kind of put that in the pro column over here. Like I've learned this already. What's the next skill set that maybe as a writer I should work on? Maybe I need to work on my dialogue, or humor, or something like that, where you're like, okay, this is an area where I struggle. Maybe I'll go and really focus on that for this book. And then
Yeah,
eventually, by the time you're, 20 books, 10 books later, you've done an in-depth study on all these different things, And now each book that you write after that is now benefiting from this effort you've given. You know, if you've given some devoted, concentrated effort towards a certain element of the craft each time,
Yeah.
it all adds up.
It does. One of the things I've learned is I signed up for this masterclass.com quite a long
Mm-hmm.
time ago. And
Yeah.
I would sit and listen to, Baldacci and Brown and them talk. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that Baldacci is really good at is he says when you create a chapter, the last three paragraphs of that chapter have to just grab the reader by the throat and just have them like, oh my God, what's happening? So they have
Mm-hmm.
to turn the page.
Yeah.
And then the first three paragraphs of the next chapter have to be the same. Where it's like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, I've got to keep going. And the dip happens in the middle of each chapter.
Yeah.
And that way you have those constant rolling up and down with the
Yeah.
pace. And you
Yeah.
keep them constantly suspenseful like that. And that to me is really what I like. And then listening to, you know, Dan Brown talking about, how he creates the characters and the little nuances in them and the
Mm-hmm.
visual descriptions of the scenes that he creates. And I
Mm-hmm.
try to remember a lot of those lessons when I'm crafting each chapter that I'm working on my own self, because
Yeah, I
these
thought his
guys,
class was excellent. I thought Dan
yeah,
Brown did a really nice job with that class.
because they've mastered the craft. And so I want to figure out how do I get myself to that level? Because one of the
Mm-hmm.
benefits that they have that you and I don't have is they have an editorial team that dissects their manuscript for them, and then
Mm-hmm.
they get to see all of these different pieces and components and learn from that. And after doing 10-15 books with a team like that, they've gotten really good.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
don't really have that, so I have to learn as much of that as I can with between my own editor and my wife who co-writes these things with me. And then I've really built up a big beta reader team, about 90 folks, broke them down
Mm-hmm.
by different military branches. And so I send different parts of the books to them, and they really help me craft it. Like I got a retired colonel, he's 101st Airborne, and he helped me write an airborne scene that was just second to none because he was a paratrooper. He knew how to write
Yeah.
this stuff. And I got
Yeah.
another guy who was a Navy SEAL, and he helped me write how a SEAL team would go about, retaking an aircraft carrier that had been, say, stolen or taken over by a hostile force. How would they go about doing it? From them using this special tool where they can hook up to their hands and feet and magnetically crawl up the side of the carrier to get themselves into a couple of the ports, and then secure a couple of specific functions that would allow for a Marine unit to fly in helicopters to land assault troops. I never would have thought of that, but they
Right. Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
So I was able to put all that into a book, and it created this incredible scene that's never been written before.
Yeah.
So
It's
I enjoy
fantastic.
it.
And our readers are such a source of knowledge and inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And just reaching out to them sometimes can be so rewarding, which is such a benefit of the time we live in as
Mm-hmm.
authors. Now that we have this way to connect via social media and email, that
Yep.
readers can read our books, go to our websites and email us directly, and usually get a response, relatively quickly, and build relationships. It's an amazing, amazing time to be a writer and a reader.
Yeah, and I love how so many of the readers want to be involved. They want to get
Mm-hmm.
involved. They want to help create the story. They want to help create that chapter. I let my readers name most of my characters in the books. It's kind of a little bit of a perk to them, and so then
Yeah.
they help spread it around because they like to show it off to their friends. And when
Yeah.
they get to write a series, like a couple of scenes, they get to brag to their friends, hey, I helped craft this scene and check it out. And they love
Yeah.
that stuff. I think that's just
My time travel FBI agent story is my main character is named by a reader who,
oh,
at one of my launch parties, I had a prize. Somebody gets to name the character in one of my future books, and I came up with a name. I said, all right, there, she's going to get her own story at some point. They don't always end up as main characters. Sometimes there's side characters or
yeah.
different elements of the story. But this particular character ended up being the protagonist. So was fun.
So before we end, I have a question. When do you
Hmm.
think we can have our next author's lunch? And do you think that maybe we should just arrange it where we meet at a park with our own lawn chairs to practice our social distancing, but still having the ability to see each other?
It's not the worst idea. Everybody bring a sub. Go pick yourself up a Subway sandwich or something, or a
Something.
burrito, or something. Pack your own lunch, whatever it is, and then yeah, just go sit in a big circle in the park or something. Yeah, I mean it's not a bad idea. It's interesting, challenging times. At least we can get outdoors and enjoy the nice weather while we
We got
still have
beautiful
it.
weather right now. It's like we
Yeah,
should be taking advantage of it and just enjoying that, not allowing ourselves to become so isolated from each other and isolated from
mhm.
society that we just lose our minds, because we need
Yeah,
that community. We need that ability
yeah,
to talk and see each other and converse, even if we
yeah,
can't, be in a tight restaurant like we used to.
yeah. And thank goodness for the technology and the time we live in.
Mhm.
For FaceTime and Zoom meeting, things like this, where we're able to have these kind of conversations and also share them on the internet. And we do live in an actual, incredible time. So the resources we have now are amazing.
Yeah.
Um, but and it's fun. It's finding new ways to connect, and I'm writing more letters to my grandmother because her, that's all. She doesn't have social media, so I'm like, all right, well, guess what? I'm getting out the pen and paper, and we're
Yeah.
gonna do some more writing. And
Yeah.
but yeah, connection is important. Definitely, got to reach out to those people, especially the ones have a chance of being lonely, or especially people who are living on their own right now. It's a good
Yeah.
time to reach out to them and check in, say hi, call them on the
Yeah.
phone, whatever you have to do to.
Yeah. We have a
And
couple
I
neighbors.
did see a news. I saw a news story today how Verizon was saying that the average phone conversation time has gone up by 33%,
That's great.
which I think is great. People are having longer conversations.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So for all of the readers out there, if you have questions for Nathan, be sure to post them in the comments below, and I'm sure he will get back to answering your questions.
Sure, I'd
And
love to.
we will work on arranging more of these kinds of conversations with the authors and get to know
Yeah.
more people.
And if you go to nathanvancoops.com, it's just my name.com, and I got a website there. You can get a couple of stories from me. If you want to just check out some of the things that I've written before, feel free to download a free book.
Yep, and I can attest Nathan's got some of the best books, and he's one of the nicest authors you'll ever meet. So thank you
That
for
is a
taking
nice
the
compliment.
time. And thank you for
Thank you for
taking
having me.
time.
I appreciate you doing this, and keep up the good work. This is a great thing you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. All right, well, we'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.
See ya.